soon as it's over, your phone rings, and what they say is, you will die in 7 days. And exactly 7 days later.
Welcome back to SledgeHammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the beautiful Felicia Lobo. Felicia, how you doing today?
I am good. I am like on a bench of recording things right now, and I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, this is super awesome. I was super excited when you agreed to come on and do this. It's something I've been very excited about. Contacting back and forth, trying to get everything set up it's been awesome, and this is so cool. For those of you that don't know Felicia, she is literally a jackass of all trades, director.
Ew, I like it.
But also musician, directing such plays as Pop Punk High. What's Pop Punk High? What is that?
Yeah. So Pop Punk High is a musical that I directed. Was that 2018? I can't remember. But I worked with it over a couple of years in different productions. But it's basically a musical set in the year 2003 about this kid that, hates his parents, life is hard, and he meets a Avril Lavigne genie who grants him 3 wishes. It's the most ridiculous show. I grew up working doing theater. So acting, that's what I went to college for. And then I started directing stuff after that. And I mostly do a lot of silly musicals. And I also do horror theater because horror is the rest of my life, as you can see.
Right. and that's what I was going to say. You also do immersive horror experiences with the Insomnium Theater Company. But also, like I said, not one to just chill out and take a break and take a breather.
Never
you're
heard
also
of a break.
Punk band. Yeah. See, and I grew up, obviously, huge punk rock fan.
Nice.
It's something that's shaped my life. And you're in a punk band called QWAM. Is there anywhere that we can check out your stuff?
Yeah. We're on Spotify, iTunes, etc., or our Bandcamp. But yeah, it's fun. It's like kind of happy, aggressive punk music, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you guys don't have to go searching because I have the links for that right down here, as well as Felicia's social media links and her YouTube channel, GirlyGore, and her podcast that she co-hosts, Sinister Sisters. It's all down here in the description. So make sure you're checking out QWAM. Make sure you're listening to everything that she's doing on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. And make sure you're following her on social media. She's a great follow. And it's so exciting for me to be here with you. So GirlyGore and the Sinister Sisters, what can you tell us about that a little bit before we actually get started?
Sure. So GirlyGore, I started my YouTube channel in 2019, I guess. And at first I wasn't really sure what I was going to do on YouTube. I've always watched YouTube. I love it. And I started making a couple of random videos just to kind of like try it out and see I don't know how it went. And then I found this like amazing horror community on YouTube. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like, what is the thing that I cannot run out of topics to talk about? What is the thing I'm always going to be excited about? And that is just horror in general. Like that's kind of been most of my life. Like I'm just into the spooky, scary. And so that's how the channel started. And I think my first review was a review of Leprechaun. So really started strong. And I just been kind of doing it ever since. Sometimes I go to horror conventions. I'll interview people. I do a lot of movie reviews. Sometimes some list videos, those kind of things. And then the podcast, Sinister Sisters, I do that with my best friend, Lauren Harris. And we actually ran Insomnium that you mentioned. We ran that theater company together for quite a few years. And then we decided we were tired. And we said, what's the most like low stakes thing we can do where we have to hang out once a week? And we can talk about the things that we like to talk about. And we were like, let's do a podcast. We don't have to show our faces. I can be in my pajamas. We can just hang out as friends and post it and see if anybody listens to it. And I never know who listens to it. Like sometimes randomly someone will be like, oh, I loved last week's episode. And I said, people listen to that? It's literally just like our hangout time. Right. So that's what the podcast is. But it's very fun. It's very fun.
Right. Well, that's why we do it. And like you said, being on YouTube in the horror community, I can completely relate. It's something you're never going to run out of topics about. And I've been so lucky with some of the guests I've been able to have. You guys are so amazing. And learning about how horror started for you guys is something that I'm always very excited about. And the movie we're doing today, I've only done one other time. So I got to take you back to the past now, Felicia. We're talking about the movie that started you in the horror genre. And your first horror movie was
The Ring. Which I feel like I am not the only one with that answer. This movie was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really did find its way into a lot of suburban homes secretly. And a lot of, I don't know how old I was when I saw this, but my older brothers snuck it in the house. Because my family, my parents, mostly my mom, is not interested in horror movies. She is not interested in anything that talks about the devil, anything like that. She's a nice Southern woman. And so they were, that's awesome.
What's her address? I just want to talk to her.
Just go say hello.
I just want to talk to her.
Yeah. My poor mother. I'm sure she did not expect me when she had a daughter to be interested in all like the weirdest, grossest things I can find. But yeah, so the first time I watched The Ring was with my two older brothers. Can't tell you how old I was, but none of us were supposed to be watching it. And I remember just there's two sides of it, right? Like the thought of like doing something you're not supposed to do, that's always been enticing for me. Like my whole life. I'm like, tell me no, I'll do it more.
Right.
It's a good and bad personality trait of mine. And so there is like the danger in it, which is already exciting. And then like the movie itself, The Ring is very, it's such a great movie because not only is it a horror movie, it's also a mystery. There's like a lot going on in there. And I just remember being so thrilled and so excited by the fact I was scared.
Right.
Like the adrenaline of it. It was like a roller coaster.
Yeah. And I can say in all honesty, The Ring is in my top 5 scariest PG-13 movies of all time. People forget this is PG-13 and this movie is fucking scary. And it's funny, I went and seen this in the cinema and it was me and my girlfriend at the time. And I sat there was another lady that sat on the other side of me and her boyfriend on the other side was just not interested at all. He was not into it. And she kept screaming. And when she would just grab onto me. And I'd look at my girl like, I've never seen this woman in my life.
I don't know her.
Like, I have no idea. So this movie in cinema was crazy because if you guys haven't watched The Ring in a while, go back and give this movie a rewatch because it is a fun movie. And a lot of loud, high-pitched noises happen throughout the movie. And in cinema, it was just so loud and scary and such a very fun experience. Now, this is a movie that has a ton of very scary scenes. Stuff that literally gives you the creeps. Maybe not today because kids don't watch those old VHS tapes like they used to. So it may not be as scary as it used to be. But what scene would you say affected you the most from The Ring?
Yes. The one for me, number one, that is burned to my brain, has nothing to do with Samara, who I love. I love the character, is the horse. The horse committing suicide into the water. What is like what still to this day that scene bothers me in the movie because it turns into this thing that I feel like a lot of people have, and including horror lovers, of just like, please don't let the dog die. Like, yeah. I can't handle if an animal doesn't make it through a horror movie. Like, I'm to the point now where sometimes, okay, there's actually a great website. I think it's called doesthedogdie.com, where you can look up a movie if the dog enters screen and it will tell you in advance if the dog is going to live or not, which is just
that's hilarious.
Yeah. If you need that resource.
Right.
But yeah, the idea of like something innocent being affected and disturbed enough to commit suicide, the idea of an animal committing suicide is so disturbing and upsetting. I just like that really stuck with me and bothered me for sure.
Take the kid, leave the horse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And this is a movie that it has a tendency of twisting things around to where I don't want to say it's like super twist, like it's not M. Night Shyamalan twist, but that you don't expect coming in a good way. And in that horse scene you're talking about, the thing that always got me is right after the horse jumps, like everybody's looking over to see, and then you just see the blood filling the water, and you're like, oh yeah, there's no question, that horse, it's done. That's a wrap for that horse.
Well, yeah, it's like the boat propeller or whatever. It's just like it disturbs you further. And what's I was actually just thinking about, like, why is this movie PG-13? And I think it's because there's really not much blood at all. So that seems to be probably why they could have passed it up that level. But the Japanese horror movies, or this is the American version, of course, those are all kind of my first horror movies, like, because The Grudge, those remakes were like really big. What year did this come out? Is it 2002?
I want to say it was 99. 2002. I'm way wrong.
Look at my brain plugging away information it doesn't need.
Yeah, it was definitely 2002, which is funny because The Ring 2 was rated R, but The Ring is PG-13. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like you said, to this day, it still boggles me, because I think you're right. There's no nudity. There's no, over the top cursing. There's very little blood. You got the blood in the water, and you got the blood on his feet after he falls down and sees Samara. But that's pretty much about it when it comes to the blood.
Yeah. But what they have to make up for it is like horrifying, disturbing energy, like imagery. Like, for actually, I mean, my second most horrified moment is the beginning with that girl in the closet. Like, seeing her face, it's like something so wrong. And I think that's, like, to me as a kid, I was just like, it's wrong. There's something so wrong with this that I'm like addicted to seeing it.
Well, and that is one of the biggest jump scares. I did a top 10 favorite jump scares episode on the channel. Ooh, and that's on there. Yeah, because she's just like, I saw her face. And damn, it's such a good, effective jump scare, because it doesn't show you her die at the beginning. Like, you don't see her die. Like, she died, obviously, because they talk about it. They're at her funeral. They're at her wake. But you don't ever see her until the mom is explaining it. She's just, I saw her face. It's like right there. And it's just so effective and so great. And I love it to this day. It's one of my favorite jump scares ever. Yeah. It gets me every single time.
Yes. And I think, like, in these early 2000s movies, like, it's kind of all about the jump scare. And I think that for me as a kid watching it, like, the physical reaction of what a jump scare does to you is, I mean, I already said, like, a roller coaster, but just, like, it's so exciting that, like, I can watch something that can make me physically react. It's like an addicting thing, I think.
Well, and I've said this on the podcast numerous times. Sorry for repeat viewers, but watching your first horror movie is like doing drugs for the first time. I don't condone using drugs, folks. Yes. But you do that and you get that high, and then you're constantly chasing that dragon, trying to get that feeling again. And it's such an amazing feeling. Horror movies is much better than drugs. I strongly recommend you getting addicted to horror movies and not heroin. But
agreed.
That's the feeling. And I just talked about it on my last episode. I always feel like the kids that grew up with horror movies are more grounded individuals. I feel like as long as there's education, as long as you have parents or peers or grandparents, family to teach you the difference, when you watch horror movies and you learn the difference between fantasy and reality, I feel like it grounds a lot more horror people into knowing the difference between right and wrong. I love Scream, man, but that movie's full of shit. Horror does not create serial killers. Mental health creates serial killers. So that's why we need to focus on mental health. But let's say, Felicia, you and I are sitting at a bar. We're not sharing a beer because that's fucking disgusting, but we're drinking a beer.
Especially after COVID, no.
Right. And someone walks up and they're like, hey, guys, I just watched this movie, The Ring. What are your thoughts? What's the first thing that's going to pop into your head when someone brings up The Ring?
What's the first thing that popped in my? I would just tell them to watch it. I would say, like, if you want, because the other thing about The Ring too is this has this like spooky blue vibe. Like, the whole movie is kind of in this bluish greenish kind of color. Like, it's like the perfect, what it makes me think of when you said earlier that you saw it with your girlfriend in the theater. It's like a great movie. And I think, like, that's very true of all the early 2000s horror films. It's a great movie to watch, like, with a significant other or like a friend, because it's a fun scare. It's a very, very fun, scary ride. It's like House of Wax or like whatever, where it's like, it's fun because it's like, it's fun to be scared with someone. It's like that kind of movie. It's like a popcorn flick. You know what I'm saying?
And the thing that I'll always remember, and I'm so sorry I'm telling the story on you, Josh, but we had a friend, Josh, when we were younger. And obviously I had this movie on VHS when it came out, and we watched the VHS, and afterwards the prank that everybody did we called and the phone rang, you know, and he's like, what the fuck? And he answered, and Justin's in the other room, like, 7 days. And he was just like, fuck you guys, this is stupid, you know, like, and it was just like, I feel like everybody at some point watching this movie pulled that on somebody else at some point, you know, call them right afterwards. It would be a lot harder today with cell phones and caller ID and shit, but I'm an old man. I was able to have fun with VHSs and cord phones. So
yes, and like the hunt and the treat of the VHS is such a fun thing. I actually have the VHS of The Ring that I got. I think I have like a small VHS collection. I know some people are like hardcore, but this is the one I wanted the most, because I remembered that when you put the VHS in, it plays the short film of the evil VHS first, and then it like plays into the movie. And dang it, when I got this and I put it in, I was just like, and that's the other thing about this movie. The movie within the movie is horrifying imagery. It's almost like Saw level in a way, because you have the fingernail, just like these things that I'm just like, like it's even so like horrifying. The little things, like the mom just brushing her hair in that mirror, like terrifying, man. Like it's such, and I'm so happy because there's a couple movies that I still have on VHS that I refuse to upgrade. Alien is one of them that I think is just the perfect VHS movie. And a lot of, like you said, the earlier films like that, they were made for that. You got to fix the tracking. You got to have that dark. Putting them in HD quality just kind of takes away some of the scares because it brightens everything up a little bit. Have you watched a revamped version of Sleepaway Camp?
Oh, how you can totally see Ricky.
Yes, oh my god, I'm so glad you knew what I was talking about. That was like a moment where I was like, some movies just don't want this. Please don't.
Well, it's funny because my wife and I, we do a segment called Didn't See That Coming. You guys can check that out on the channel. Go down here, click on there, go to the playlist and watch Didn't See That Coming.
Click it.
Where we bring guests in and we talk about movies with twist endings that we didn't see coming and how that affected us. And a great friend of mine, the hot horror queen, she came on and we did Sleepaway Camp. And obviously in preparation for that, my wife and I, before we do any film, we always purchase the physical copy. That way we can own it and have talking points on it. And we bought the Blu-ray copy of Sleepaway Camp, obviously, and watching it. And you get to that scene and I was just like, you can see it clear as day. It's
right there.
Like clear as day. You could see it. And you're right. You watch that on an old school VHS, you can't see it. It's just a shrouded figure. Yeah. But you watch it on that Blu-ray, and me and Ash, we just started laughing. We're like, wow. Like, you know, it's something we brought up in the episode is like, what I didn't see coming was rewatching it on Blu-ray and seeing Ricky there in the doorway. That's what I didn't see coming.
Turns out Ricky's the killer too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you're right. It's amazing how these things happen. But real quick, Felicia, we talked about which scene affected you the most in The Ring, but what would you say your favorite scene from The Ring is?
My favorite scenes are like in the attic of the barn when she's sort of like getting to understand what this like little girl went through, and she's pulling the wallpaper off the wall. There's something about that space up there and knowing that that's where she was, and that she's really reaching out for help becomes this thing that is kind of the beautiful, scary part of the movies to me. And yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite parts. And then of course I can't not talk about her crawling out of the TV because that's just like freaking epic. Yeah, but something I want to just touch back on for a second about this movie is like a VHS about a VHS being something that can curse you, seeing something that you're not supposed to can hurt you.
Yeah.
Is like a double thing of watching a horror movie. It's like, not only might I have nightmares, but I also might die.
Right.
Like that's kind of such an amazing concept. And it's funny because my second horror movie was actually The Grudge. So like the days of the Japanese horror remake. So also the imagery that is very prevalent with the crawling and the dark hair over the eyes, like all of that was my first exposure to horror. And like, so that kind of imagery is always like, I just freaking love it. It's just like, it's so scary.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. I feel like the first horror movie we watch really shapes us for who we become in our horror life. Like my first horror movie House from 1986.
Nice.
And so I think that's why I love jump scares. That's why I love a good love story inside of a horror movie, because that's what I saw first. That's what really turned me on to the genre. So something now we got to talk about, Felicia. We got to go dark here. As horror fans, we love the kills. It's something that we love. We tune in for it. And there are some really good kills in this movie. Upon a rewatch, I always rewatch these movies before I do an episode on them, so I don't sound like a dumbass. But there's actually quite a good amount of kills in this movie. Which kill from this movie, excluding the horsey, would you say is the kill that affected you or your favorite kill from the film?
Great question. If only I had rewatched the movie before this, so I wouldn't sound like a dummy. I think the one that's like coming to my brain is the opening girl as the most effective one, because of that jump scare that we already discussed. Who else dies? This is terrible of me.
You've got her Samara's dad when he electrocutes himself in the bathtub when he has all that stuff connected to him. You've got the kid's dad when she comes out of the TV and gets him and his face melts away. Like, so I mean, there's a good amount of good deaths in this.
Dang it, it's definitely that bathtub one then. Thank you for reminding me. I literally haven't watched this movie in a while. Probably should have rewatched it.
Well, it's just how he's almost scared when Naomi Grossman's there, and he's just like, or Naomi Watts, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't supposed to have children. And then he gets to that bathtub and he, just turns it on and God,
like it wasn't supposed to be like this.
Yes, such a scary, sad scene too. So Felicia, we talked about your first horror movie, which is The Ring, and we dissected that a little bit. But now I want to turn the tables a little bit, how the turntables, and I want to go scream on you here for a second. What's your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Favorite horror movie of all time. Can I give like a list? Does that have to be the singular?
Let's do a top 3 in no order.
All right. Okay, in no order, I would say for a horror movie for horror fans, my favorite is Cabin in the Woods. For a horror movie that is just fun to watch, Jennifer's Body Baby. And then a horror movie that really horrified me, that like stuck with me for a long time, is I'm gonna say Midsummer. So
okay.
A recent.
Yeah. See, I think the scariest movie that I've ever seen, hands down, no questions asked, is The Exorcist. That movie terrified me as a young boy. It terrifies me now as the father of little girls. It's just a movie that is super effective to me. And it's funny that you bring up Jennifer's Body, because I can't fucking watch that movie, because every time I watch that movie, I'm singing through the tree for like 3 weeks. And so I can't do it, because that song gets stuck. It's the catchiest damn song. And you got Adam Brody up there rocking and singing it. Like, I can't do it, man. Like, it's great movie, great cast, but damn me if I don't sing that song for months.
Yeah, there's something else I love about that movie. Like, it's kind of in the name of my channel too, GirlyGore. Like, I love strong contrast, so I love pretty girls doing horrible things. Like, that is like a big that's like a subgenre I love. So like, I'm telling you,
that's like my wife marrying me. A beautiful girl doing a scary thing. Like, I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. Like, glitter and blood, all those things mashed together. It's like, that's what I'm interested in, is that strong contrast.
That's awesome. Well, and this has been so much fun, Felicia, but we always end my first horror movie on the same question. We're going to go to a skull count. And what we're doing now, we're going back to The Ring, and we're ranking this movie 0 to 5 skulls, 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. You can use half and quarter skulls. Now, we're not being critics. We're not ranking it on acting, production, score, color correction, nothing like that. We're ranking this movie strictly on what it means to you and how much this movie affected you on first viewing. So 0 to 5 skulls, what would your ranking of The Ring be?
Does everyone just say 5?
No, no.
No. Yeah, I would say 5, because it's the movie that got me into horror movies. It's also like, it has a female protagonist. There's a little girl in it. Samara's a female character. I feel like all of those things like combined in this movie because the woman is the victim and like the person trying to solve the mystery.
Right.
So I feel like as a kid, I saw myself in the movie in multiple ways. And so that's, you know, it got me addicted to horror films. So I would definitely say a 5. And like I said, I may not have watched it recently, but I have watched it in the past, I don't know, couple years. And it holds up really well too, which is
it really does. And horror has always been ahead of its time when it comes to social issues. I mean, women were kicking ass in Alien and Nightmare on Elm Street. You had the Final Girls. When, you know, Night of the Living Dead has its social commentary. Like, horror movies were always ahead of their time. But the thing I love about horror movies is when you can make a horror movie scary and have an underlying message. Don't put a message in my face. I don't want you pushing a narrative in my face the whole time. I want you to be a horror movie first and then have some great messaging to go along with your content in the movie. And horror has a great way of that balance. Night of the Living Dead, they don't once talk about the fact that it's a black man saving a white woman, but that social commentary is totally implied throughout the whole movie. But they don't have to come out and say it to you. They know that you're smart enough to understand it. So, Felicia, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, I already said it at the beginning, but I'm going to say it again. Make sure you're following the podcast, following her on social media. Make sure you're checking out the band, and make sure, please, you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and checking out everything she does. She's a very busy lady that works really hard on her content. So make sure you're showing the love back to her. As always, guys, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.